Hello, good afternoon. Thank you again for coming to look at another video here on Caribscope, Caribbeanology, whichever one you may want to call it. And I could not wait to come back up here to do this video today. Thank you guys for looking at the other video. Even one person giving me a response video, the first time that has ever happened. So I feel important now. Someone responded to a video that I created. So again, I was so excited, could not wait to come up here to put this video together for you guys. And this is a response video because it's going to be a video that deals with some of the questions that were brought up, or some of the statements or comments that were brought up in that other video that I did yesterday. I'm not going to edit this video, so I don't have all the graphics to point to it right now to say what that video is, but I think I titled the video Hard Questions for Hebrew Israelites. So if you get a chance, you have to look at that video first, and don't do like one person, the person who created the response video, who said he only watched 7 minutes of the video, the beginning of the video, and the video is actually 31 minutes long. So he made an entire 30-minute video about 7 minutes of the video. Now hopefully at this point he has gone ahead and watched the entire video, and hopefully by now he actually catches the points that I was trying to make, instead of thinking that he can get the gist of the video just by watching the first 7 minutes. One of the things that he said in the video, or the comment that he made, he said, I am like I forgot the exact wording, a plantation Christian. I thought that was hilarious because, number one, I am not a Christian. What I was, once upon a time, 2 decades ago, I was a Christian. But that's so far in my rearview mirror right now. So I'm not currently a Christian. So the whole plantation Christian type of thing, I don't know if it was supposed to be a disparaging remark or a remark to dismiss me as being a plantation Christian, so I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I don't feel any offense, bro. Okay, so don't worry about it. All right. But just want to let you know that I am not a Christian. That's number one. The second thing is, you know what? I'm going to get back to that whole Christian thing eventually. Hopefully I do. But the second thing is, someone asked me, do you even believe in the Bible? And I'm going to address that one soon. But another person came in and says, if you don't believe, why create a video? If you don't believe what we believe, why create a video? Well, number one, I've never been one for people to invite me to talk about a particular topic. You know, if it's on my mind, I'll just go ahead and talk about it. This is YouTube. I just decided to do a video. Whether I believe in this stuff or not, I decided to go ahead and do this video. Because I must admit, the Hebrew Israelites, they're fascinating to me. You know, how they came about, why they are here, their motivations for why they teach what they teach, or believe why they believe, has always been fascinating to me. Being a Christian once upon a time, I know the effects that the supernatural can have on our minds, and the fascination that we have with the supernatural, with the divine. We are human beings, and one thing about us as human beings, we try to find meaning in this existence we call life. We hate to think that we're just existing and that's all that there is. So we humans attach meaning to our lives, attach meaning to the universe around us, attach meaning to the natural world around us. We've been doing this since the beginning of time, because that's just us as humans. We see something we don't understand, the mysteries and so forth. Not saying everyone does, but a lot of us are going to be like, I want to attach meaning to this. Why did this happen? How did this happen? What caused this to happen? And so we go and we fill those gaps in with things like conspiracy theories, with superstitions, and so on. It was the great Robert Ingersoll, one of my favorite agnostics, who made a statement, and I'm paraphrasing him. He says, God begins where our ignorance starts. You could fill that in with anything else, but basically what he's saying, when we come to a place where we don't understand something, or we don't know what's going on, or it's a mystery to us, and our ignorance comes up against it, we feel that we have to fill it in with something. God, the devil, the Jews, the liberal media, or something, the government. They, you always hear it all the time. We've got to fill it in with something in order for it to make sense to us. And once we fill it in with something and we feel content with what we filled it in with, then it's like it's no longer a mystery. I've got it. I know the answer. I know what they're up to. I know what they're doing. I know what they did. I saw what they did. That's what we do. Anyway, let me go back and address which one that I said I was going to address. The one where the person asked me if I even believe in the Bible. Here is the fascinating and interesting thing. I don't believe in the Bible in terms of a book that I read in reverence and adhere to what the Bible says or what it says to do or not to do. I do not. I'll give my reasons shortly. So I don't look at the Bible as that. But I also look at the Bible as a fascinating book because I'm deeply into history. And history is not just studying black history and whatever, but I love to study the effects of religion, like how religion evolved amongst the human species. The effects that it has had, that to this very day, it still has a grip on large portions of the world's population. I've always been fascinated with that. So when it comes to the Bible gives me some insight to an ancient world and what people believed and how they looked at the world back then. So it is fascinating to me in that regard. Now, here's another thing. This ties into the other question that was asked. If you don't believe, why are you discussing this? Do you know that when I was growing up as a little boy, one of the fascinating things to me, and it was odd because I'm in 3rd and 4th grade. Do you know what was the most interesting thing to me to read? Outside of reading the Bible, because that's what my grandmother had me doing. Beyond the Bible, I wasn't a kid at that stage of my life reading comic books. I wasn't reading Nancy Drew stories or whatever they call those things. I wasn't reading that stuff. I was reading Greek mythology, Roman mythology. Those things fascinated me. Now, we have the story of the Trojan War. And that story is mentioned in Homer's book known as the Iliad. Of course, the Odyssey then is the follow-up. That book tells of the Trojan War. Now, when I read that book, I don't believe the stuff that's in the book doesn't mention some factual things. It mentioned Greeks. We know there are such people known as Greeks. It mentioned the Trojans. We know through archaeological digs that there were people known as the Trojans. Those are facts. But the details that it goes into, and it explains the Trojan War. If you notice what Homer does, he explains the Trojan War through the lenses, or through the lens of the supernatural. So instead of just saying there was a war between two groups of people, there's color added to what was going on. So he set it up where it was like, well, there were 12 gods on Mount Olympus. 6 of them were on the side of Troy. 6 of them were on the side of Greece. So every action that was taking place on the earth, it was as if these 12 gods were battling each other on Olympus, and their battle was being played out in the Trojan War. So when Hector on the Trojan side was doing whatever he was doing whatever he was doing. He was the hero on the Trojan side. He was doing whatever he was doing because he was being aided by the gods who were on the Trojan side. Then you had the gods on the Greek side, and they were aiding the Greeks on their side. So you see how that works? But it's a book that I can discuss I can talk about. Do I believe that there were gods up there manipulating the events of that war? Of course not. Of course I don't. Was there a Trojan War? Archaeological digs and excavations claim that there was perhaps a war that destroyed this great city of Troy, and that it was done by the hands of the Greeks. Do I believe that there was a big Trojan horse and there were Greek soldiers who went inside and they snuck it into the city, and then they came out and destroyed the city overnight? There's a possibility for something like that. But all of the supernatural details and everything that came in to color the story, make it more fascinating, make it more interesting, where the gods are in the heavens fighting or in Mount Olympus fighting against each other, and their war is being played out on the earth in a war. I find that fascinating, but of course none of that was actually true. And I'm sure any of you who are watching me right now would not go ahead and say, well, yeah, I read the Iliad, and I believe that Zeus was doing this. Yeah, and I believe that Apollo was over here doing that. And do you know that Aphrodite was doing this, and she caused this, and she caused that, and this is why Paris, the other hero, why he did whatever he did, or Achilles on the Greek side, this is why he did this and that, because these gods over here were manipulating him to do such and such, and so and so. Many of you watching this would not go ahead and say any of that is credible. You would just look at it as there was a war between the Greeks and the Trojans. Leave the gods out of this. There was a war. Something happened. They decided to fight against each other. They fought. The Greeks won. End of story. You would find something like there may have been an insult given, some king insulting another king, or someone kidnapped somebody's daughter. You know, in this case, the story was Helen of Troy. You know, well, she was actually Greek. Or you may say the Greeks wanted to conquer another group of people because they wanted the land or the resources that were over there. You'll find real earth reasons for these type of things. Not because if you remember, well, I don't know if you've read the story, but according to what I remember from Greek mythology, the war all started because I think there were two reasons. And one reason sounds more realistic than the other. One was the Trojan prince by the name of Paris came over to the Greek area and he kidnapped the wife of one of the kings of Greece, Sparta or wherever it was. And he took her back to Troy and basically made her his wife, you know, because men could get away with that crap back then, right? So he goes and he does that. And when he does that, he brings her back over, and the king find out what was going on. It was like, wait, that guy over there stole my wife or stole my woman? This means war. And before you know it, the war broke out. That sounds more realistic, right? But there's another side of the story, or another explanation to why the war started. Turns out that Paris was minding his own business. Again, he was a Trojan prince, minding his own business. And the female gods are fighting over who looks the best, or who is the best, or whatever. They see this guy, they come down, they show up, and it's like, hey, I have a golden apple. Now, I may not have the details correct, but they had some gift to give to him. And they're basically saying, choose which one of us is the best. Which one of us looks, is the hottest. Give this apple to the one you think is. I think there were three goddesses there. I think there was Hera, I think there was Aphrodite, and I think Minerva. Okay? And he decides to give the apple, if I'm not mistaken, to Aphrodite, I think. What happens next? The other two female goddesses got upset, angry. You're gonna pay for this. Aphrodite's like, whatever. And before you know it, they instigated behind the scenes. They instigated the leanings or the leadings to war. So whatever actions they did, or they motivated, because I think, if I'm remembering correctly, Aphrodite said, listen, if you can pick which one of us is the best in the world, or I think they offered him certain things. If you choose me, I'll give you this. If you choose me, I'll give you that. And I think Aphrodite told him that if you choose me, I will give you the most beautiful woman in the world. The most beautiful woman in the world just happened to be somebody else's wife. But she kept her promise. And she went and she was able to get him to get that woman. But by getting that woman, it then triggered a war. So, of course, the other goddesses went over on the Greek side because it's like, Paris didn't choose me, so I'm going to choose the Greeks, and I'm going to fight with the Greeks. I'm going to lead the Greeks into battle. I'm going to aid the Greeks in battle. Meanwhile, on the other side, Aphrodite and five of the other gods basically were on the side of Troy. So I'm saying all that to say this. When it comes to the Bible, it's basically the very same thing. So if the Israelites crossed a river and they ran into some complications and somehow they managed to come out miraculously, it's attributed to, and God delivered his people safely across the whatever. If there is a battle and the Lord went out in battle before Israel, if a king who people considered to be evil or not living right or doing the commandments of God, if he fell off a horse and he broke his neck, and the Lord punished Ahab for his sins by him falling off of that horse. If something happened to somebody else and they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, they were evil or they were not a righteous king or righteous queen, and some evil or some misfortune befell them, then it was, and the Lord did so and so. So you see, it's the same exact thing. Now, you can see these different things in the Bible. For example, David and Saul. When David killed Goliath, according to the Bible, when they came back to the city, the heroic army of Israel came back. The women came out and they started singing, Saul has killed his 1,000, but David has killed his 10,000. Saul got jealous, got angry. And before you know it, Saul started becoming more brooding. And he knew that David was destined to be king, to replace him. And he didn't want that. And Saul would sit there brooding, and David was hired to play a harp for him and calm his nerves. And every now and again, Saul would just snap and pick up his javelin and throw it after David to try to kill him. Any clinical doctor looking at that and looking at that story would say Saul began to become a megalomaniac, start to suffer from paranoia. But in the Bible, in the ancient world, when they didn't understand those type of things, what does the writer say? An evil spirit came over Saul, or God sent an evil spirit to torment Saul. Today we look at it and we say, hey, that's paranoia, that person has schizophrenia, that person has this, whatever. It's something clinical depression, whatever. In the ancient world, they didn't know anything about that stuff. So when they saw people acting out and doing those type of things, they attributed it to something divine. Going back to Ingersoll's point, the people were ignorant of medical conditions like that. And because they were ignorant of medical conditions like that, they attributed it to the divine. Well, hey, Bob over there has really been acting crazy of late. I guess an evil spirit has come over him. He's going around the place doing all these. It's got to be an evil spirit. It's not because it's schizophrenia. What's that? We don't know what that is. Clinical depression? Why is he always depressed and down and out? We don't know what clinical depression is. It must be he's not doing something right. It must be the Lord is dealing with him. The same exact thing, where you're looking at the natural world, not understanding the natural world and how it works, how it operates, not knowing the scientific method, not knowing any of that, and then as a result attributing it to God, gods, or devils. Just imagine, thousands of years ago, a group of people moved from one location looking for food, looking for more fertile land, and they come up on a land where they see all this lush vegetation, and they've decided, we're going to settle down right here. We're going to settle right near the ocean. And right behind them is a tall mountain, and right in front of them is the ocean, settled in a nice valley. While they're there, they settle in for quite some time. 100 years in, 200 years in, 500 years in, the mountain begins to rumble. And before you know it, it starts to belch out fire and lava. starts streaming down and rushing towards their habitation and kills many of them. These people did not know what a volcano was. They did not know what seismic activity below the earth was. They didn't know what earthquakes were. They just knew the mountain began to rumble, start to rumble under their feet. They see fire. What did they do? Did they go ahead and say, well, let's go ahead and consult this volcanologist over here to find out about volcanoes? And he pulls out a video. Hey, let me teach you about volcanoes. This is what happens. The earth cracks open underneath, usually through seismic activity, all the pressure, it builds up into this cone, and it shoots up. They didn't know any of that. So what did they do? There must be a God living in that thing. And we must have done something to offend that God. That's why the fire's raging down on us. And all of a sudden, you have religion. Someone pops up. Yeah, there's a God up there doing that stuff. But if you pay me, if you give me everything, I will go up there and I'll talk to this God on your behalf. And I'll find out what's going on. I'll find out what's wrong. Just build a nice little temple for me so I can hang out in here. And I'll communicate with this God on your behalf. Where have we heard this story? Where have we heard this story before? Or where do we continue to hear the story? That's one thing. Let's forget about the mountain. They're near the ocean. They're getting food from the ocean. Things are going well. They swim. They do whatever. Maybe there's a river coming down where they go ahead and they wash their clothing or whatever they do. They bathe and everything. And then one particular day, the seas decide to turn into a raging force. And it just rises up, comes on land, and just basically washes away the community, kills a lot of people. Those people did not understand something called tsunamis. They didn't know that an earthquake occurred 800 miles away that kicked up that tsunami. They just saw the sea raging. The naturally calm sea, all of a sudden it's raging and now it's killing them. In the ancient world, what do you think that they did? There must be a God that we angered. There must be a God under the sea. There must be something, some divine force that's more powerful than us that's causing this. And if something like that happened and it came up here and killed off all my family and everything, we must have offended it. How do we appease it? What do we do? See how the ancient world worked? So when it comes to the Bible, it's the same exact thing. The people didn't understand anything back then. I'm not saying that you did not have civilizations that did not have knowledge of certain things. But the common people back then didn't understand the natural world. Didn't understand what an earthquake was. The earth just started rumbling. They had no idea what was going on. Just rumbling. Must be some God did it. The mountain explodes and kills a bunch of people. We don't know what that is. I guess a God is up there doing something. Thunder and lightning. Ooh. There must be a God up there doing something. Throwing down lightning, killing people, lighting forests on fire with this lightning. Part of their will. It's the same identical thing that went on when it comes to the Bible. So when I'm asked if I believe in the Bible, it's just like the Iliad. It's a book I find fascinating. It gives some insight to an ancient world and to an ancient war, but it's colored in with religious deities and whatever to just make it a more interesting story. Imagine just sitting around and telling that story around a fireside. So when I read the Bible, I read it with the same fascination. I get some insight that there's a place called Jerusalem, or there was a place called Jerusalem and it still exists today. I get some insight that there were a group of people that inhabited Transjordan and they were known as the Ammonites and the Moabites. I learn about cities like Babylon because I read about it in the Bible. So yes, there are some factual things that are mentioned. There are some factual things that probably did happen. But again, when the people told the story, they told it through the filter of religion. And you have to sometimes peel away the religion to find the truth of what's going on. There's a story in the book of, I think it's in Numbers, or maybe Deuteronomy. I may be wrong. Now listen to this carefully. The chapter opens up, and it basically said that the men of Israel went and basically engaged in a big orgy with the women of Midian. So as the Israelites are coming out of Egypt and heading towards the promised land, They run into the Midianites, and the men, I guess, decided, hey, let's throw an orgy. Let's go sleep around with these women. And then the Bible says a plague broke out. And it attributes the plague to God sending the plague. But what do you think really happened? Think about it. Let's just say it is a factual story. Get rid of the religious addition and baggages that's thrown into the story. If I had to look at that story, what that tells me is that there was a breakout of sexually transmitted diseases, but they call it the plague. These people didn't know what was going on. And so we read later on where Moses, somehow recognizing that an association with the Midianites brought about this plague, which was attributed to God sending the plague. And Moses basically told the Israelite army to go down to Midian and go ahead and just kill everybody. Yes, it's in the Bible. But save the virgin girls for yourself. Which should tell you something. Why save the virgin girls? But why kill all the women that have been with a man? Because that is what it says. Kill all the women that have been with men, but save the virgin girls for yourself. What did Moses, or what did the writer, what do you think happened then? They made a connection. It looks like the women that we slept with, this plague broke out with those women, but the virgin girls, that never happened with. Let's kill all of them because they spread the plague. Keep the virgin women to yourself because something pure about them that is not causing us to have the plague. Another story, if you go to the New Testament. A man comes to Jesus and says to him, listen, my son keeps throwing himself down on the ground, cutting himself up, throwing himself in the fire, injuring himself. And Jesus, as the Bible goes ahead and says, the writer, not knowing what epileptic seizures were, because that's clearly what this child was going through. If you had to read it to their doctor, had to look at that. Yeah, that's clinical, that's epileptic seizures. That's the behavior of an epileptic. Child is having seizures, falling on the ground, throwing himself in the fire, and whatever. But back then, because the people didn't understand what that was, what did they attribute it to? Demon possession. And so Jesus cast out the demons, and the child was good again. If you went around and see someone having epileptic seizures right now, right? If a doctor who's specialized in that stuff happened to see that, you think he's going to sit down there and say, oh yeah, that child is demon possessed. Take him to church. Let some pastor pray for him. No. They're going to go to try to get the necessary medication that this person needs. But again, in the ancient world, in the Bible, they believe that stuff was caused by demons. See? Taking the spiritual world, applying it to the natural world, because we don't understand what's going on in the natural world. So we go ahead and we add that into the equation. So when I'm asked if I believe in the Bible, I don't believe in the Bible to say that's where I believe my quote-unquote salvation lies. The Bible is just another book to me in a collection of books that I find fascinating for reading to understand the ancient world. Gives me a glimpse into the ancient world from a religious perspective, how people looked at the ancient world through spiritual lenses. But I don't believe in the Bible where it's like, well, the God said this, so, oh boy, the God of Israel must have done this for real. No, of course I don't believe that. And I explained to you all that I've been saying. I explained to you why I don't. Which leads to the other thing, because I am an atheist. So I'm not a Christian. But it doesn't stop me from reading the Bible. It doesn't stop me from having somewhat of a healthy respect for the Bible. Because I can look around and say, well, you know what? It's an important book. Just like the Iliad is an important book. The events in there touch on some things that were true, but a lot of the stuff in there, all the color that's been added, that was added to the book, they're not true. But I respect the book. I like it because I like the contents that it tells. The same thing about the Odyssey that comes after the Iliad. And other books that we have today, the Game of Thrones, the series, the Game of Thrones, the books, or Harry Potter, or the Lord of the Rings. Are those things true? No. Makes for a fascinating story, though. where when the Game of Thrones were on, people would come into the office and talking about dragons, talking about fire, and talking about whatever other, or reading about Harry Potter, talking about witches and whatever. But the people who are talking about this stuff, do you think they believe when they walked out of the movie theaters or in front of their television those things were actually real? No. But it didn't stop people from talking about it. They didn't believe in it, but it didn't stop them from talking about it. So I just want to just more or less explain that for those who may not understand why I could be discussing a topic like this, but don't believe in the stuff that's being taught there. So no, I am not a Christian. And no, I don't believe the Bible in terms of reverence. I remember a person who said this to me. He said, Christians may go ahead and read the Bible devotionally. That means when you're going to go read the Bible, you're already coming into it with a belief in mind already that this is the Word of God. So you're reading it devotionally, trying to find things in there to inspire your faith, to increase your faith, or whatever you may want to do it there with, but you're coming in with the belief that this is the Word of God and that's where you're going. So when you read the Bible like that, you tend to read the Bible more in a horizontal fashion, just like you read any other book. There's a beginning, there's a plot in the middle, and there's an end. Academically now, when you read it from an academic where you're not going in with a belief, you're just going in and just saying, let me just read this book and see what I can gather from it, see what I can glean from it from an academic and historical standpoint. Then you look at things differently. In that case, you're taking each book as they come, so you tend to read it in a vertical fashion, not in a storyline, but more in a vertical. Here's the book of Genesis. Let me read the book of Genesis only. I'm not paying attention to Revelation. I'm not paying attention to the book of Micah or Isaiah at this point. So I'm not looking at one book and like, well, here in the book of Isaiah, it's prophesying and it's talking about whatever, and that prediction came to pass in the book of Jeremiah. And no. Book of Genesis, that's what you're reading. You focus on the chapter. You focus on the words. You look at the book of Genesis. You finish with that book, you put it aside. You get to the book of Exodus. You read that book. You see what's going on. Now, of course, some things carry over, and there is a theme I won't deny, to some extent. But you don't stay in the future and go back and reinterpret. And that's another thing, interpreting the Bible. That phrase is just so, when people say stuff like that, well, interpreting the Bible, why would you have to interpret the Bible? Because when you talk about interpretation and you put interpretation amongst millions, billions of human beings and say interpret, you're going to get a whole lot of different opinions on what is being in there. And which is what explains why you have so many different factions and so many different sects in Christianity alone. Because it's left up to interpretation. And then they're going to be people, so even the Hebrew Israelites, even the gentleman who posted a response last night, which is going to lead into one of the last points that I want to make. It then brings about this, and because I was a Christian, I didn't feel offended by him making certain statements, or some people putting things in the comment section. Because one of the things when it comes down to interpretation of the Bible, it then, whether you know it or not, produces a level of arrogance. Well, I have interpreted the Bible correctly. You peon, you peasants, you haven't interpreted it like me. And if I don't believe it the way you believe it, you dismiss me. Well, he doesn't have the Holy Spirit. He doesn't have the Spirit to guide him. He doesn't have the Spirit to illuminate the Word for him. More or less what they're saying is, if you don't believe what I believe or see it the way I believe, or you have issues, or you have rebuttals, or you have complaints, or you have disagreements or critique of what I believe, one way I can dismiss you is by saying, get away from me. You don't know the Bible like I know the Bible. You don't have the Spirit to guide you. I do. Look at me. I'm imbued with the Spirit of God to illuminate the Word before me. Yes, I was once there. I was once a Christian. And I remember the world was black and white. You're either doing the right thing and following my belief and the way I look at the world through my Christian faith. And if you don't, you're a sinner. End of story. You're lost. The devil has you blinded. But me? God has shown me the light, and now I understand the whole Bible. And I have the truth over here, truth that you don't have. So I dismiss you. And then, as somebody did, I think he also did the same thing, or somebody in the comment section came in and like, what association does the light have with darkness? The implication is I am in darkness. I don't know any better. I'm stupid. I don't have it. God does not reveal his deeper inner truths to you. But hey, I have it. And what association should I have with you? You're in darkness. I am in the light. I shouldn't have any association. Easy dismissal. So if I come up to you and I make a point and I ask you a tough question you can't answer, you know what? You don't understand the Bible. You know what? The Holy Spirit needs to show you something, and you don't have the Spirit, so I don't need to sit here and discuss anything with you. Bye. Now, I wasn't one of those Christians that did that because I used to love a good engagement, right? But not only a good engagement, that's another thing I want to point out. I didn't come to this lightly and come to this position. I didn't wake up last week and ended up on social media and start reading books on different things. I've been on the internet since 1998. Some of you weren't even born yet. I've been on the internet since 1998. That's number one. I was on the internet when we were still using Windows 95. And one of the first things I did when I got on the internet, I just went to a bunch of bulletin boards. As a Christian back then, I was always debating people left and right, debating a bunch of atheists, debating Muslims, debating Buddhists, all sorts of different people. I wouldn't say met, but I engaged with so many people. I learned a lot along the way. A lot of books that people are coming into now, like, well, hey, look at this book. Those are books I read a long time ago. The Kebra Nagast from Ethiopia. The book from Celsus, Celsus. Those are books I read a long time ago. I learned about those things from other people years ago. Long before social media, before there was a Facebook, before there was a MySpace. So I didn't just wake up last week and like, oh, well, okay, I just know this. I've been reading about Josephus's account, the Book of Antiquities. These were things I was reading 25, 30 years ago that are now, well, hey, have you seen this book from Josephus? Did you see what he wrote? I've been reading about African history way back when books were starting to appear on the internet. People were uploading books, and you could go and you could read all these type of things, and some things were much easier to access back then before they were putting a price tag on everything. I remember sites like Lycos.com, like AltaVista.com, like not Netgear, I forgot the name of it, but a whole bunch of sites I used to be a part of. Some of them are no longer around. Bulletin boards where you would go in and you would debate people, you would put up your thoughts, your topics, whatever. Today I do it through YouTube instead. So this is nothing new to me at all. And I am not turning around and saying this arrogantly like, well, you don't know the truth and you whatever. I'm coming out here, I'm saying what I'm saying. Yes, I'm going to call something BS if I think it's BS. But it just so turns out when it comes to the Hebrew Israelites, again, just looking at religion, and it fascinates me how because really what it really boils down to, it's really this. We as black people, we've been oppressed. We've been downtrodden. We've been put down. We've been told there's nothing that we should be proud of. The Africa that our people came from is dark. Those people are backwards. They don't know any better. They didn't do anything. We Europeans are the cream of the crop. Look at what we've done. And they go ahead and they try to suppress in the past, or not explain, or not say certain things about us as black folks. We are a broken people, a traumatized people. So when you have people who come to you with teachings, especially teachings that says, you are special. You're not just special, but you're a special person of God. God has you as part of a group of people that are special snowflakes over here. You guys are the blessed one. You guys are the anointed ones. And all those other people over there, they're not like you, because God's blessing is upon you. God's identifying mark is upon you. But on those people over there, he isn't. It's nothing more than the self-affirming praise. But then it could turn around and it could make us feel good about ourselves, where you get this smug feeling like, I'm one of God's children, you know. You're not. I am. Do you know I am part of a people who are the apple of God's eyes, according to the book of Hosea? I am part of that special group. You're not. So when you have black people, young men who are out there just don't know what's going on, don't know their history, don't know anything. Things like the Nation of Islam, what they teach, or the Hebrew Israelites, which are just more or less a variation of that, basically. Of course, there are differences in teachings and whatever, but it's basically the same bottom line principle. I'm going to teach you something that's going to make you feel special about yourself, that's going to make you feel good about yourself, that could help you to turn your life around. Do you know that you're one of God's special people? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, yes, you're black. That means you're part of God's special people. Do you know that you are linked to the ancient Israelites of the past? The Israelites. Do you know you're a part of those people? That's your historical lineage? Oh, I didn't know that. And look at the Israelites, that mighty great people of the Bible. Don't you feel proud to be a part of those people? Yeah, I guess so. Come along with me. Follow my teachings. Follow what we believe. You're going to feel much better about yourself. Instead of being out here tied up with drugs, all the different things that are out there on the streets, come with me. Turn your life around by believing in this stuff. So as I said yesterday in my video, I don't have to apply any of that to give myself self-worth. But I can understand how some other people can need something like that. Need that affirmation. Need something to pat them on the back and say, you're special. I don't really need that. Once upon a time, that's the way I was. I would walk around the place, I'm a Christian, I'm a child of God, I'm on the way to heaven. You're going to hell, but I'm on the way to heaven. I'm going to be singing on the streets of gold. You're going to be burned up in hell. And when people come to me and say certain things, I would sit around and like, well, you could say whatever you want to say. The devil has you misled and whatever. I don't even have to listen to anything you have to say. And one of the last things I'm going to mention here, in my journeys, way back when I was first on the internet and I was debating with atheists and whatever, there was one person that used to tell me something all the time. And there's an old saying that goes like this: you may not hear me now, but you would listen to me later. When he was saying whatever he was saying, I would just ignore him, and which is what happens here, which is something I forgot to mention. I am saying something about the Bible. Clearly, I'm I'm disclaiming discrediting things in the Bible, or I'm critiquing things in the Bible, and someone will come to me, and the very same thing I'm critiquing, they're using it as the proof to believe what they already believe. But the person used to say to me all the time, "Sir, you cannot use the Bible to prove the Bible." Didn't make any sense to me back then. But later on, I listened. It stuck with me. You could not use the Bible to prove the Bible. Just imagine me walking down the street and saying, "Hey, do you believe in Harry Potter?" And you say no. "Oh, it's a book of whatever." "Well, you don't believe it?" "Well, according to here, in chapter 7 of this book here about Harry Potter, it says Harry Potter existed. It's here in the book, in this book. I'm taking this book about Harry Potter to prove that Harry Potter exists. Same thing with the Bible. So I'm saying all of this, and yet some of you are coming in and basically still using the Bible to prove the Bible. Well, the Bible said this over here in Genesis chapter 5. So because it was confirmed over here in the book of Habakkuk chapter 4, I'm taking what I see in Habakkuk chapter 4 to prove the truth of what is in Genesis chapter 5. Taking the Bible to prove the So when you hear me saying whatever I'm saying here, you cannot go and grab the Bible to prove what I'm already discrediting. I'm saying this book that you're telling me about and you're using, there are things in here I am critiquing. There are things in here I'm discrediting. And then you're going to take the same book and say, but look here in Romans chapter 15, it says, how far do you think that's going to get? Anyway, I really went over, and I know it's all over the place, but I hope you get the gist of what I was trying to say. So number one, I am not a Christian. I am an atheist. Number two, I may not believe in the Bible. Doesn't mean I don't find it fascinating, just like I can find a book of some other book. I mean, I don't know, Game of Thrones, the series. Find it fascinating. I can talk about it. I can be talking to somebody about it like as if I believe what went on in there. Doesn't mean I believe it. Just a fascinating book to discuss. But I am so thankful for you guys for coming in and looking at the video. Please, this was not something where I'm walking around the place talking about I'm hating Hebrew Israelites and whatever. And some of you may want to take it as that. That's not the case. Just a topic I find fascinating, and I talk about it. Okay? I'm sure I'm going to think of something else I forgot because I'm doing this during lunch. I'm not editing anything. I'm just going to upload the video the minute I finish talking and close this thing out. And I'm sure I'm going to think about a whole lot of things I forgot to say. But hopefully it did address some things and you get a little bit of a better background. Now, what you can do, I have some other videos, some older videos on this channel. I think it's called Why I Left Christianity, or I forgot what it is. If you want to get a better understanding of where I'm coming from when it comes to that, go back and look at those videos. And the most popular video on this channel, which it's really weird because I never thought it would get to this, but the most popular video I have is called When Yah Became God. You can go back and take a look at that one too. That one I am surprised it blew up the way that it did, but it's there. I can do a better job now. I mean, I did that years ago when I was in New York City, I think 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was in New York City. And of course, I look over the video and I realize there's a lot that I forgot to mention, a lot that I forgot to include. But if you want to go back there, and some of you may have seen the video already, and some of you may have gone ahead and dropped your comments in there. But do me a favor, take a look at those videos. But before you even jump to those videos, if you didn't see the video that I'm responding to right now, which is called Hard Questions for the Hebrew Israelites, you can go ahead and take a look at it. And not just 7 minutes of it and then do a response video. Watch the entire video. After you finish watching that video, then you can come and listen. Then you can come and listen to this video again. All right? Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for viewing all the way up to this point. I'm thankful for you guys, all right? Even though you might be critical and you might be sending pronouncements of judgment on me and telling me how lost I am and whatever. That stuff doesn't even faze me. I used to tell people that crap all the time when I was a Christian, so it doesn't even faze me. All right? So when you're coming in and pronouncing judgment on you, you're just going to get this. All right? Take care, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Until another video from Caribbeanology or Carib Scope, you guys take care. Bye-bye.